Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thought. From here, we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 13 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Bergio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Bergio. Phil, welcome.
Thank you.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and invite you to do the same. I want to start by saying thank you to all of our guests, and especially our listeners, who have made You're the Poet possible. We hope you enjoyed the podcast and the poetry that is shared here. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Marc Weiner. Marc, welcome.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Thanks so much. This is great.
Yeah, we're glad you could join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode. To start things off, I'm going to turn it over to Phil to share a classic poem for the episode. Phil?
Okay, this poem is by Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe was a contemporary of William Shakespeare. He was born in 1564. He died May 30th, 1593. He was only 29 when he was murdered. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about his death. The most famous one, or probably the truest one, is he got in an argument over money in a bar and they were drunk. They had a fight. He got stabbed in the head and he died. But some of the other theories were that Queen Elizabeth ordered his assassination because of his atheistic beliefs. Sir Walter Raleigh wanted to silence him so he wouldn't be exposed for his atheistic beliefs. One of the funniest, not the funniest one, the one I kind of like the most, is he faked his death and he used William Shakespeare as his front man. He wrote all the Shakespeare plays and gave Shakespeare the credit. I'm thinking he got drunk in a bar fight. That's how he ended it. Okay, this poem is called The Passionate Shepherd to His Love. And if you know anything about Christopher Marlowe, you can see where he's trying to woo a woman to be living with a shepherd, which is not the coolest thing. No offense to any shepherds out there. The passionate shepherd to his love. Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove, that valleys, groves, hills, and fields, woods or steepy mountain yields. And we will sit upon the rock, seeing the shepherds feed their flock, by shallow rivers to whose fall melodious birds sing madrigals. I will make thee beds of roses and 1,000 fragrant posies, a cap of flowers and a kirtle embroidered all with leaves of myrtle. A gown made of the finest wool, which from our purdy lambs we pull, fair lined slippers for the cold, with buckles of the purest gold. A belt of straw and ivory buds, with coral clasps and amber studs, and if these pleasures may thee move, come live with me and be my love. The shepherd swain shall dance and sing, for thy delight each May morning. If these delights thy mind may move, then live with me and be my love. Christopher Marlowe.
All right, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward.
If you've ever seen Shakespeare in Love, you get a kind of a good picture about Christopher Marlowe. I think they did a good job of portraying him.
I like this a lot. And one particular line strikes me as being just deliciously romantic. And I will make thee beds of roses. Just that line, absolutely magnificent. And I looked up a little bit about Marlowe, Phil, and your description of the possible ways he could have died is just great. He was quite a guy. And Shakespeare in Love, I forget who played him.
I don't remember the actor either.
Yeah, but just really great stuff. But I love that line, and I will make thee beds of roses.
Yeah, I agree. I like that and those follow lines that where he goes through that, the 1,000 fragrant posies and a cap of flowers and a kirtle.
I had to look up the word kirtle. It means like a dress or a jacket.
Nice. All right. Well, from there, we're going to go on to my poem for the episode. This is a pretty straightforward poem. I used to do a lot of my laundry at the laundromats, and I actually really liked it because I would use the time to write in my journal. I would write some poetry. I would catch up on reading. So for me, going to the laundromat was kind of like a time to get away and have time to myself. Well, I also did my laundry. So this one's pretty straightforward. This is called Dryer. Orange shirt, blue jeans, sock, orange shirt. Blue jeans, sock, orange shirt, flannel. Sock, orange shirt, flannel, blue jeans. Flannel, orange shirt, blue jeans, sock. Tumble, 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 turn. Circle, spiral, turn, tumble. Turn, tumble, circle, spiral. tumble, spiral, turn, circle. Through the glass I see them spin, orange shirt tumble, blue jeans turn, slowly drying heat within, flannel circle, spiral sock, waiting for their trip to end, rolling racing, nowhere quick, sock and blue jeans tumbled, turn, all that spinning makes me sick. Orange shirt, blue jeans, sock, orange shirt, blue jeans, sock, orange shirt, flannel, sock, orange shirt, flannel, blue jeans, all collapse as dryer stops. Matthew Bergio.
That's great.
When I first read it, I didn't look at the title. I'm thinking, what the heck is this? And then, oh, okay, it's the dryer. And
Yeah, you're just watching one of those front load dryers and just all the clothes that are circling through there.
It's a lot of fun, and I like the way it rhymes and it doesn't rhyme, and it captures kind of the randomness of things going around in a circle like that. And then some points you look at something like that and think you see a pattern, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
As I was thinking about what I was going to read on, I have this theory that a lot of poetry, I'm not ready to say most, but a lot of poetry is in some way autobiographical, is in some way a diary piece. And so this is a moment in time for you.
Definitely.
It's just very, very visual.
I chose it this week because I was doing a lot of laundry and I even like cut myself on a laundry basket. And I was thinking like, man, I remember the days of just being at the laundromat and mindlessly doing my laundry. And so it was kind of a silly poem, but it just kind of caught the moment. And I agree. A lot of my poetry is autobiographical or telling the stories. You know, most of my form that I use is the ballad form, and it's basically a storytelling. So with that, we're going to turn it back over to Phil to share his poetry for the episode. Phil?
okay, this poem was called Familia. That's Italian for family. During my time of grief and sadness, and through the tears I could not hide, I was so grateful for my friends and family who stood with me by my side. For me, these two words, friends and family, blend to form just one. For all my friends are family to me, and that will never be undone. So here's to all my family, those by blood or by choice. I shout it out, love you all, in my clearest, loudest voice. I love you. Philip Bergio.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I know family is definitely very important to us. We hear that a lot on that podcast for our listeners who've been following us along the way. I wanted to say I definitely love that line, the how friends and family blend to form just one, and how they're one and the same. I like that concept.
Yeah, that struck me as well. The idea of alignment, that family is aligned, and it's really sweet and beautiful.
Yeah, I agree there. All right, from here we want to move to our guest section of the episode. Mark, you're the poet. Show us what you've got.
All right, so when this first notion of coming on and talking about poetry first occurred to me, I went back and found a little chapbook that I put together in the summer of 1997 called What She Did Deny. And it's a collection of poems. It's got roughly, 15 poems in it. Looking back at it, it was sort of a diary of the summer of 1997. And without going into too much detail on sort of the history of it, I have 3 poems from it that capture my spirit of that time. And they were all steeped in autobiography, diary, and to pull a little from Salvador Dali, the persistence of memory. This one is called Hide and Seek. There is that moment in the child's game of hide and seek when the seeker, after hiding his eyes in deep trust that the game is actually being played according to accepted but unspoken rules, and after counting to 50, opens his eyes and looks around to see not one of his playmates there. And at that moment, in the heart and mind and soul, but mostly in the pit of the stomach of the seeker, there emerges a theory that he is, indeed, very alone. Not just in the sense of how the game is played, but rather because, while his eyes were closed in deeply trusting compliance, his playmates, themselves mired in the deep and unquestioned structure of the childhood conspiracy of exclusion and other cruelties, abandoned the game and the seeker, and snickering to each other with hand signs and winks, left him alone in the field by the patch of woods with his eyes closed and counting to 50, to come by himself to the realization of his abandonment. And then, head bowed, feet scraping through dead and fallen October leaves, to walk home alone and to deny in response to his mother's inquiry. that anything is wrong. Marc, Weiner.
I really like that one. Just that whole idea. Because you're right. I mean, kids, they have those insecurities and that, that's that trust in that childhood game that I'm going to close my eyes and count to 50 and hope that when I open my eyes and I'm alone, that I haven't just been abandoned and a part of some prank by my friends.
Yeah, I wrote it on September 7th, 1997. So roughly, this time of year. And it's actually two sets of memories combined. It captures my mood of that moment. I'm not this morose in real life anymore. It captures this concern of abandonment, which I think, unfortunately, is more of a universal background feeling for a lot of people than it should be.
Right. Phil, any thoughts there?
No, I just enjoyed it. And you read it pretty good, too. You got a good poetry voice.
Well, thanks. I call that my FM radio voice. So, in keeping with sort of walking backwards in time, about a month before that, on August 8th, 1997, in Newport, Rhode Island, that one was written in Somerset, New Jersey. Each of the pieces in the book has a sense of place. This was written in Newport, Rhode Island. We were off for a trip to Newport, and it's called Tape Scans 1 and 2, Roman numerals 1 and 2. And sitting here now, for the life of me, I can't tell you why that's the title. I have absolutely no idea what that means, other than that there are two sections to it, one under Roman numeral 1 and one under Roman numeral 2. But it's Tape Scans 1 and 2. 1. Children cannot estimate their proportions. Their understanding of distance, their sense of relative locations are all epic. Yet they dance, feel free, and understand the distance is not great from where they are to where they will, when time calls in its loan. Until then, we age with headlights dimmed, pulls in the driveway unaware. They trust the way the wind blows leaves and water drains through dirt. 2. He knew these things and understood the way they stained his memory. In increments, the quiet comes. In stages comes the peace. Indifferent, indiscriminate, a reckless, restless glow. At once he knew his life to be insufficiently destructive itself. At Saugatuck, the grand idea, well-reasoned, justifiable, to smash the silken surface and to pull the threads unraveled, for the danger, dull and aching, was now parked out by the curb. The headlights now off, the windows up. The door is closed in defense. So grand and full and warped and skewed and insular and terrified, the distance was not, after all, as epic as it seemed. Marc, Weiner. As I said, that was August 8th, 1997. Clearly, I wasn't having a great summer. There's a darkness. And also, again, reading these now, there's a continuing reflection on childhood.
Yeah, I noticed that there and a couple of elements about that.
How old were you when you wrote that?
I was 1997. I was 37.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was 37, 38 years old.
Okay, that would put you, 70-something now, 60-something now?
I'm 65 now. So actually,
Okay.
I got my calculator here. I know I'm in the last stage of baby boomers, and I have a calculator in addition to, a fairly good computer setup. Like you would have, like it's an adding machine. My father would have called it an adding machine. I was 38 years old. I turned 38 in June of that year. But Hide and Seek reflects on childhood. It pulls up a sadness of childhood, while Tape Scans tends to pull up, or at least the way I'm reading them now, pulls up a lighter kind of that children will dance and feel free and understand that it's fine. There's plenty of time until time calls in its loan. And then in section 2, the narrator slowly comes to peace with the fact that time is slipping away. In increments, the quiet comes. In stages comes the peace.
Yeah, that was my favorite line, I think, for the whole
I like
poem.
that.
Yeah, that jumps off the page, and it still gives me chills kind of when I read it. It's a little embarrassing to be excited about one's own work, I think.
I don't think so.
It just feels weird. I guess in our dialogue, I was talking about, I just never published this. I wrote it. I have a little chapbook, and if anybody out there in poetry land would like a copy, I'd be happy to email a copy to you. Just email me at whatshediddeny, all one word, whatshediddeny at proton.me. That's at proton.me. And I'll be happy to send you a free PDF copy of it. So yeah, it's been a really energizing experience to pull this out and have a reason to look at it again after all this time and to think about it. And it's had I don't want to get too out there, but it's had a little bit of a psychotherapeutic value in going back and looking at where my head was at 27 years ago. And then even beyond that through the imagery of the poetry itself to when I was, a child playing hide and seek.
I think there's something great about that, though. I think there's nothing wrong with being excited about your work. Especially, I like that this is something you wrote years ago and you're kind of revisiting it and getting those memories. And obviously, as we all get older and hopefully gain more wisdom, we've got different perspectives on things. And I think that's kind of neat that you can get excited about your work. Writing and poetry and the arts, they should be enjoyable for us.
I acknowledge that and I appreciate the observation. And it also occurs to me that one of the things I guess I'd like to highlight is the therapeutic value of writing, from journaling to writing poetry to expressing inner thoughts and going through the potentially emotional complexity of getting those thoughts into words.
I was going to say that, yeah, it's therapeutic in a good way,
Yeah.
Even if you're writing from something in the past that was sad, it's good to get it out. It does help your soul.
That's a funny thing. I was reflecting a lot on the past, and I found a quote by William Faulkner that I think kind of captures the spirit of my revisiting this. And it's from his book, Requiem for a Nun, 1951, William Faulkner. The past is never dead. It's not even past.
Yeah, okay.
So this idea somehow that the past can always come back to visit you. If it's unreconciled, if it's unsettled, if there is still pain that hasn't been grieved, that becomes an opportunity. And poetry and journaling and whatnot become a vessel, a tool for becoming more comfortable in one's own life.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I found looking back at some of my poetry, when I go back and read it through the years, I notice some things in life become cyclical. That like, okay, I've been in this situation before, and I've written about it 20 years ago or whatever. And sometimes some of those same topics and some of those same things kind of come back into our lives.
No, I think that's true. I think there are themes, happy themes, sad themes, and they emerge at different times and places. We were talking earlier about the importance of family, and family brings up themes, and very often historical themes, because you grow up together and have common experiences at common times. And there's something very powerful about that.
I shared one of my poems with my sisters, and then one says, "Did you write this to make me cry?" I go, "Yeah, I did."
If you're evoking that kind of emotion, that's the stuff. That's the ticket. That's it.
It was a good emotion, but she said she got all teary-eyed.
Well, we tend to valorize happiness and joy as if those are the only worthwhile emotions. But, we need the full spectrum. Sadness and sorrow have their place in a fully realized existence. I just saw both of the movies Inside Out, the Pixar Disney movies. And what those do is they reveal the interior workings of a child's mind.
I saw the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet.
Yeah, the second one's still in theaters. We actually paid Amazon some amount of money to watch it at home. It's really great. Aside from being a charming story, the guy who did it, the showrunner, his last name is Docter, Docter, worked extensively with psychiatrists and neurologists and psychoneurologists to understand the way the mind works in terms of how memories form beliefs and how beliefs come together to create core being. And it's just brilliant and generates a great deal of thought. So I didn't mean to be putting a plug in for a Disney Pixar thing, because Lord knows they don't need my help.
I agree with you, though. I saw that one. My wife and I went and saw it last week or the week before. It's funny, but it does. The way they tie those emotions in and the different personalities that the emotions have. And for those of you that haven't seen it, this part 2 goes through, she's going through puberty. So it's the emotions that come up for puberty, which is entertaining.
I'll wait till it comes on Disney. Mark, you got another one for us?
Yeah, I have one more. This was written, like the first one I read was written in the first week of September. The second one I read was written in the first week of August. This was written in the first week of July. And by the way, I didn't intend that. That just kind of fell out naturally. And I don't think it has a great deal of meaning, but it's interesting enough to point out. This is called An Empty Chair. And this is an absolutely true story. This happened one night. An empty chair. Upon a certain urgency, he'd planned that they would see the sunset. He had organized and calculated and predicted the best location so as to not miss what everyone had told them to be sure not to miss. And while vying for the best location, unnoticed, the sun set without them. Looking around years later, he realized that things had not gone according to plan. He realized that everything had changed. He just wasn't quite sure when, and that troubled him. So to clear his mind, he'd walk at dusk through the backyard of the condominium complex, and although not spying but still looking, he would see framed through the sliding glass doors husbands and wives and children engaged at dinner in the dance of detail, the knowledge of the daily intimacies which more than anything defines a family. And from the hill through his own window, he'd see the chair where sometimes he once sat. And then he'd pause. There was no force, no call, no rhyme, no particular reason to return. Eventually, though, he would return and sit and await the darkness on the wooden porch with 3 candles, which by casting their glow offered him the view of the world, or at least of the porch, which was warmer and sweeter and lighter than he knew it really was. But he permitted the illusion anyway. The walk was done, and it had brought him here to sit alone and watch the darkening sky and the moving leaves blown upward in the anticipation of a storm. And he thought, now what? Now nothing. He sat. He sustained. Ultimately, he felt from the candlelight a strange warmth, which afforded him a final sort of relief from the edges and places and spiders and winds and pots of clay, these things which define the porch, those things which, because they so successfully ignored time, made him anxious in a way which he refused to admit. As it started to rain, predictably, calculatedly, in an organized, almost planned movement, he got up and blew out the candles and realized that nothing burns off perfectly. There's residue that's left behind. Marc Weiner.
All right. Thank you for sharing. Man, there's a lot that I like going up there.
I like the porches. I just like sitting on the porches and different times of day. Yeah. Plus all your imagery.
We were talking about the things on the porch and that concept of how because they so successfully ignored time that, they don't change. And even though that obviously the author has, gone through some changes in his life.
Yeah. And if I could show you a picture of the porch, it would line up perfectly. It was a wonderful porch. And the thing that stimulated this poem in the first place is I was sitting out there and there were 3 candles. And by the way, those candles would make an appearance on page 10 of What She Did Deny with a poem called Candles, which is about those 3 candles. But the image that generated the impulse for the poem in the first place was I was sitting out there. It was dusk, the candles were, and the wind came and it blew the leaves of the trees that were directly in front of me. It blew them upward. And it really looked like a storm was coming. And that impelled the poem. And pretty much I drafted it out right then and there. This is the sort of sad story stuff I was writing at the time. And to the extent that it compels thought and feeling and would make somebody think about what defines a family. Well, you come home and you put your keys somewhere. That's what I call a daily intimacy, a dance of detail. You come into your house and your wife knows where your keys are, where you put your keys, but a stranger wouldn't. That's what I think of as a dance of detail of a daily intimacy.
That's a good line. I like that.
Yeah, I like that dance of detail and intimacy. I like that.
Thanks. The other thing that occurred to me is looking back at this work, maybe I should have published it. It all fits together so nicely. It's a nice little chapbook. So, like I said, if anybody wants a copy out there in Poetryland, I'm happy to send it to you. What She Did Deny at proton.me.
All right. Yeah, well, definitely please check that out. Let Marc know what you think about that.
How did you find out about us?
I'm friendly with A. Benedict, who was
Okay.
on 2 or 3 episodes ago.
Right. Okay.
And he told me about it, and that caused me to listen to that episode and then to listen to some other episodes and say, hey, that looks like fun.
It
I want to
is.
do that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you contacted me and came onto the show. We definitely appreciate that.
Spread the word.
Actually, I will. I accompanist, and if I could put a plug in for if you're in the Princeton, New Jersey or Central New Jersey area, the Arts Council of Princeton, which is a nonprofit in Princeton that celebrates and advances the arts, has an event the third Thursday of every month, and it's called Story and Verse. And it's a warm and welcoming spotlight for emerging and established artists in a little theater in the Arts Council building in downtown Princeton. People bring stories, poetry, prose, and it ranges from free verse storytelling, sort of like The Moth, to more formal poetry. And it's a wonderful experience. And that's Thursday night, the third Thursday of the month. It'll be the 19th this month. And you get there like 6:45. It starts at 7.
All right, yeah, if you're in the area, check it out. All right, from here, we're going to move on. Got a little feedback here for the episode. This is in response to episode 11. This is from Bernie M. She just said, these are great to listen to. So she just wanted to mention that as she was listening to episode 11 with Simon Drake. So thank you there, Bernie. As we wrap things up, we want to let our listeners know we are grateful that you've taken the time to tune in. We hope you're enjoying the poetry shared here. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with others. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Please check out the website at www.you'rethepoet.com. There's a section there that answers questions about being a guest. Follow us on Facebook for updates and info, and send us an email to host@you'rethepoet.com for feedback or questions about the podcast and how to be our next guest. Now that the You're the Poet community is expanding at a rapid rate, we have set up a Patreon site for those who would like to show their support for You're the Poet. You can find us on buymeacoffee.com/you'rethepoet. Thank you for your support as we continue to grow. Until next time, Phil, thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
Mark, thanks for being our guest.
My pleasure.
Keep in touch, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a follower now. I'm listening.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Goodbye.